Chosen ones. Listen carefully. If you're here because you think being chosen by God means protection from pain, ease in your path, or a life of applause, close this now. That belief is not faith. It's fantasy. God does not choose his strongest warriors to keep them comfortable. He chooses them because they can endure what others would collapse under. Comfort creates passengers. Calling creates carriers. And if your life has felt heavier instead of easier, harder instead of softer, more isolating instead of more celebrated, that is not evidence of abandonment. It is evidence of selection. This message is not meant to flatter you. It's meant to correct you. Being chosen is not a reward. It is an assignment. And assignments come with weight. 1. Comfort is removed before capacity is revealed. God strips comfort early because comfort hides weakness. When life is easy, character stays theoretical. It exists only as an idea you have about yourself, not as something tested and proven. Anyone can believe they are patient when nothing provokes them. Anyone can claim faith when nothing threatens them. Anyone can talk about discipline when there is no cost for being lazy. Comfort lets illusions survive. This is why comfort is dangerous. It allows you to think you are strong without ever asking you to prove it. It allows habits to remain shallow, convictions to remain untested, and faith to remain performative. As long as everything is soft, you never find out what breaks you. You never find out where your limits are. You never find out what you run to when pressure shows up. Comfort keeps all of that hidden. You don't know what you believe until belief costs you something. You don't know your discipline until no one is watching. You don't know your faith until obedience hurts. These aren't poetic ideas. They are practical realities. The moment comfort disappears, truth appears. Pressure reveals what was always there, but never exposed. If God allowed you to stay comfortable, you would never discover what you're capable of carrying. You would stay small while thinking you're ready for more. You would ask for greater purpose while remaining emotionally fragile. You would want responsibility without resilience. That combination destroys people. So God intervenes early, not late. He removes the cushions. He removes the emotional safety nets. He removes the predictable support. The job doesn't feel secure anymore. The relationships stop feeling safe. The routine you relied on gets disrupted. The certainty you leaned on disappears. Suddenly, life feels unstable, and you start asking what went wrong. Nothing went wrong. This is exposure, not punishment. God is not being cruel. He is being precise. He is removing the artificial supports that were carrying weight you were supposed to carry yourself. As long as those supports remain, your capacity stays dormant. You never develop spiritual muscle if something else is doing the lifting for you. Think about strength in any real sense. Muscles grow only when resistance is applied. Remove resistance and muscles shrink. The same is true for faith, discipline, and character. Comfort removes resistance. Discomfort introduces it. Without resistance, capacity never develops. With resistance, capacity is forced to expand. This is why chosen people often experience discomfort earlier and more intensely than others. It's not because they are weaker, it's because they are capable of more. God does not place heavy weight on weak structures. He tests load-bearing capacity carefully, and when he sees potential, he increases the load. This is the part most people misunderstand. They assume discomfort means they are failing. They assume struggle means God is distant. They assume difficulty is a sign of being off track. In reality, comfort is often the sign of stagnation, not blessing. Ease does not always mean alignment. Sometimes it means you've stopped growing. When comfort is removed, insecurity surfaces, fear surfaces, doubt surfaces, old coping mechanisms surface. You start noticing impatience, anger, avoidance, and dependence that were always there but never triggered. This is not regression. This is revelation. You are seeing yourself clearly for the first time, and clarity is uncomfortable. Many people try to escape this stage. They rush to restore comfort as fast as possible. They chase distractions. They cling to people God is trying to loosen. They numb themselves with noise, habits, and validation, but that only delays the work. God removes comfort because comfort interferes with honesty. And honesty is necessary for growth. The discomfort you resent is the training ground you need. It is where weak habits are exposed, so they can be corrected. It is where shallow beliefs are challenged, so they can deepen. It is where emotional dependency is revealed, so independence can form. You are not being crushed, you are being conditioned. Capacity is not revealed in theory. It is revealed under pressure. You don't find out how much you can carry by imagining it. You find out by carrying something heavy and not dropping it. God does not trivial capacity first and then add weight. He adds weight, and capacity reveals itself through endurance. This is why the early stages feel chaotic. You feel stretched beyond what feels fair. You feel asked to handle more than you feel ready for. You feel like the support disappeared before you were prepared. But preparation does not happen before responsibility. Preparation happens inside responsibility. God trusts growth to occur under load, not before it. Comfort would have kept you passive. Comfort would have kept you untested. Comfort would have kept you dependent. So it had to go, not permanently, but purposefully. Temporary discomfort creates permanent strength if you don't resist the process. If you are in a season where comfort has been stripped away, stop asking when it will end and start asking what it is revealing. What reactions are surfacing? What dependencies are being exposed? What assumptions about yourself are being challenged? Those answers point directly to the capacity God is developing. This is not about suffering for its own sake. This is about readiness. God is not interested in making your life harder for no reason. He is interested in making you capable of handling what's coming without breaking. And capacity must be built before assignment expands. Comfort hides weakness. Pressure reveals strength. And revelation always comes before promotion. If comfort has been removed, capacity is being prepared. 2. Isolation is not rejection, it is positioning. When God begins serious work in a person, one of the first things he does is reduce noise. And the fastest way to reduce noise is isolation. This is where most people panic and misinterpret what's happening. They assume isolation means abandonment. They assume distance means disapproval. They assume loneliness means something went wrong. That assumption is false. Isolation is not God pushing you away. It is God pulling you closer and removing interference. Before he builds anything significant through you, he limits access to you, not because others are bad, but because influence is powerful. And at this stage, influence must be controlled. Crowds dilute clarity. Too many voices confuse direction. When everyone has access to you, obedience becomes negotiable. You start explaining instead of listening. You start compromising instead of aligning. Isolation solves that problem quickly. Chosen people are rarely developed in groups. They are refined in quiet. Silence exposes what distraction hides. When the noise fades, you begin to hear your own thoughts clearly, and more importantly, you begin to recognize which of those thoughts are not aligned with God. Isolation forces honesty. This is why God separates people before he positions them. Before public responsibility comes private formation. Before leadership comes loneliness. Before influence comes inward order. Anyone can act strong in front of others. Few can remain disciplined when no one is watching. Isolation removes the performance layer. In isolation, there is no applause to feed your ego. No feedback to reassure you. No distractions to numb discomfort. You sit with yourself, and what rises in that space is not random. Insecurity surfaces, attachment surfaces, fear surfaces, old habits surface. These things were always there, but they stayed quiet as long as life was busy. God is not surprised by what surfaces. You are. This is where many people make a mistake. They assume the emergence of weakness means decline. In reality, it means exposure. Exposure is not failure. Exposure is the beginning of correction. God cannot refine what you refuse to see. Isolation forces you to see clearly. This is also where dependence gets addressed. Many people unknowingly depend on others for stability, identity, or emotional regulation. As long as those people remain close, the dependence feels normal. When God removes or distances those connections, the discomfort feels unbearable. But what you're feeling is not loss, it's withdrawal. God is breaking unhealthy reliance, so strength can form internally. If your peace collapses when people disappear, then your peace was never solid. Isolation rebuilds peace on a stronger foundation. Another reason isolation is necessary is protection. At early stages, your calling is fragile. Your convictions are still forming. Your discipline is inconsistent. Exposure at this point would damage you. So God hides you. He limits visibility. He restricts access. He allows misunderstandings. He allows people to walk away. Not everyone who leaves is an enemy. Some are simply no longer permitted access to who you're becoming. Isolation also sharpens discernment. When voices are few, you begin to distinguish truth from preference. You start recognizing which impulses are emotional and which are directional. You learn the difference between urgency and obedience. This discernment cannot be learned in noise. It requires stillness. This is why many chosen people experience seasons where friendships fade. Messages slow down, invitations stop coming, and life feels strangely quiet. That quiet is not emptiness. It is space. Space for alignment. Space for recalibration. Space for internal order. Most people resist this stage. They chase stimulation. They force connections. They reinsert themselves into environments God already removed them from. And when they do, confusion returns. Anxiety returns. Discipline weakens. The jealousy they briefly tasted disappears. Isolation is uncomfortable because it removes external validation. You are no longer reinforced by being needed, wanted, or admired. You must learn to stand without being propped up. This is not cruelty. This is not cruelty. This is preparation. God is teaching you to draw strength from alignment, not attention. Another uncomfortable truth is this. Some people cannot go where you're being taken, not because they are inferior, but because the path requires a different level of discipline, sacrifice, and obedience. If they stayed, one of two things would happen. Either you would slow down for them, or they would resent you for changing. Both outcomes damage the assignment. So separation happens, and yes, it hurts. Loss always hurts, even when it's necessary. But pain does not automatically mean something is wrong. Surgery hurts too. And surgery is healing. Isolation also exposes whether you seek God for who He is or for what He gives through others. When people are gone, motives become clear. Prayer becomes honest. Faith becomes less performative. You are no longer supported by collective energy. You must generate your own discipline. This is where spiritual maturity is built. If you are isolated right now, stop interpreting it as rejection. Ask instead, what is being refined? What is being removed? What is being strengthened? What distractions are gone that used to control me? What truths am I now forced to confront? Isolation is temporary, but its effects are permanent if you don't resist it. God isolates before He elevates. He separates before he sends. He hides before he reveals. If you feel alone, it may be because access to you has been restricted for a reason. This is not punishment. This is positioning. 3. Delay is how God builds depth. Delay is one of the most misunderstood tools God uses. Most people interpret delay as disinterest, denial, or neglect. They assume that if something were truly meant for them, it would arrive quickly and smoothly. That assumption is shallow. Speed does not mean approval, and delay does not mean rejection. Delay is intentional. God delays outcomes because depth cannot be rushed. Anything that arrives too early collapses under its own weight. Influence without maturity becomes arrogance. Responsibility without stability becomes anxiety. Success without depth becomes destruction. God delays not because he is withholding, but because he is preparing you to survive what you are asking for. Chosen people experience waiting differently. Their waiting is not passive. It is formative. While others receive quick rewards that fade just as fast, chosen people are held back so their inner structure can be reinforced. Delay creates room for humility, patience, and emotional regulation to form. This is where many people fail. They confuse waiting with stagnation. They assume nothing is happening because nothing is visible. But the most important work is rarely visible. Roots grow underground. Foundations are poured below the surface. Delay is where internal alignment is established. When God delays something you desire, he is not ignoring your effort. He is testing your motivation. Are you obedient only when progress is visible, or are you committed even when nothing moves? Delay exposes whether your faith is conditional or rooted. This is uncomfortable because delay removes dopamine. There is no quick feedback, no applause, no reassurance. You are forced to continue without emotional rewards. This is not accidental. God is training you to operate from conviction, not stimulation. People who cannot tolerate delay often chase shortcuts. They compromise values. They force outcomes. They attach themselves to things God never approved, just to escape the discomfort of waiting. This creates temporary relief and long-term damage. God delays because he refuses to build your future on desperation. Delay also stretches perception. When things don't happen on your timeline, impatience surfaces, control issues surface, fear surfaces. You start questioning whether you misheard God or misunderstood your direction. This is not to confuse you. It is to clarify you. God wants to remove false expectations before real responsibility arrives. Delay dismantles entitlement. It strips the belief that effort guarantees immediate reward. It teaches you to trust process over prediction. Another hard truth is this: some things you want would crush you if you received them too early. You may desire influence, leadership, provision, or visibility, but without depth, those things amplify weaknesses. God delays to ensure your internal capacity matches the external assignment. Depth is built through repetition without reward, through obedience without confirmation, through consistency without validation. Delay forces you to show up when quitting would be easier and no one would notice. This is where endurance is formed. Delay also protects you from comparison. When you are waiting, you see others receiving what you want. Their lives seem to move faster. Their progress appears smoother. This comparison can poison the heart if you let it, but it also exposes insecurity and envy that must be addressed before you move forward. God would rather deal with jealousy now than let it corrupt you later when stakes are higher. Chosen people are often delayed because they are being prepared for long-term impact, not short-term excitement. Quick success satisfies ego. Sustained impact requires depth. Delay teaches you to measure growth internally instead of externally. You learn to value alignment over achievement. You stop asking, when will it happen, and start asking, who am I becoming while I wait? This shift is crucial. Many people receive what they want, but remain internally unstable. Chosen people are withheld until stability is non-negotiable. Delay is also where trust is refined. When nothing changes externally, prayer becomes less transactional. You stop bargaining, you stop performing, you stop pretending. Faith becomes simpler and more honest. You either trust God without proof, or you walk away, and that choice defines depth. If you are in a season of delay, resist the urge to rush it. Rushing creates fractures. Forcing outcomes creates misalignment. Escaping delay creates future problems disguised as solutions. Instead, pay attention to what delay is building. Notice the patience forming. Notice the emotional regulation strengthening. Notice the clarity sharpening. These are not side effects. They are the goal. God does not delay to frustrate you. He delays to fortify you. Depth must come before expansion, and delay is how depth is built. 4. Obedience is tested where it costs most. God does not test obedience in areas that are easy for you. He tests it where it threatens your comfort, your attachments, and your sense of control. Obedience that costs nothing proves nothing. Real obedience is revealed only when compliance requires sacrifice. This is where many people misunderstand God's expectations. They believe obedience means agreeing with God when it aligns with their desires. That is not obedience. That is convenient. Obedience begins the moment God's direction conflicts with what you want, what feels safe, or what preserves your image. Chosen people are tested at their pressure points. God touches the thing you are most tempted to protect, the relationship you rely on, the habit that comforts you, the plan that gives you security, the identity you've built. These are not random tests. They are precise. God is not interested in partial alignment. He is interested in surrender. Partial obedience keeps you internally divided. 1 foot with God, 1 foot with self-interest. That division creates instability. God tests obedience to remove that fracture. This is why obedience often feels unreasonable at first. It asks you to let go before you understand, to act before clarity applies, to trust before certainty exists. If obedience made sense immediately, it wouldn't require faith. The cost is the point. Obedience exposes whether God has authority or merely influence in your life. Influence can be negotiated, authority cannot. When God instructs you to move, to stop, to release, or to wait, obedience means acting without negotiation. This is uncomfortable because it threatens control. Many people confuse faith with agreement. They believe as long as they intellectually agree with God, they are aligned. But obedience is behavioral, not theoretical. It is revealed through action, not belief statements. When obedience costs you approval, you discover whether your identity is anchored in God or people. When obedience costs you comfort, you discover whether peace is internal or circumstantial. When obedience costs you opportunity, you discover whether you trust God's timing or your own urgency. God does not test obedience to make you suffer. He tests it to solidify alignment. Alignment cannot exist where there is resistance. Resistance keeps you half-committed. Half-commitment weakens resolve and invites confusion. This is also where fear surfaces. Fear of loss, fear of being misunderstood, fear of regret, fear of missing out. God allows these fears to rise so they can be confronted. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is obedience in the presence of fear. Chosen people learn to obey without emotional certainty. They move before confidence catches up. They act while doubt is still present. This is not recklessness. This is trust. Another reason obedience is tested where it costs most is because whatever you refuse to surrender will eventually control you. God targets attachments not to deprive you, but to free you. Anything that has more influence over your decisions than God has become an idol, even if it looks harmless. Obedience dismantles hidden idols. This process is painful because attachments feel like survival. Letting go feels like loss. But what feels like loss in the moment often reveals itself as relief later. God removes what limits you so capacity can expand. Many people delay obedience until they feel ready. That readiness rarely comes. Obedience precedes readiness. Readiness is the result of obedience, not the requirement. This is why delayed obedience feels heavy. It creates internal tension. You know what to do, but you resist it. That resistance drains energy, clarity, and peace. Once obedience is enacted, even when it hurts, peace follows, not comfort. Peace. Chosen people learn this distinction. Comfort avoids pain. Peace endures it. If you are facing a decision where obedience feels costly, that is not a sign to retreat. It is a sign that the test is real. Easy obedience does not build strength. Costly obedience builds conviction. God tests obedience where it costs most because that is where alignment becomes permanent. And once alignment is permanent, clarity follows. 5. Strength is forged through pressure, not praise. Praise feels good, but it is a poor builder of strength. It inflates without reinforcing. Pressure, on the other hand, compresses, sharpens, and solidifies. This is why God allows pressure to remain on chosen people long after others would have been relieved from it. He is not trying to break you, he is shaping you. Most people think strength comes from encouragement, recognition, and affirmation. Those things may motivate, but they do not fortify. Praise rewards what already exists. Pressure creates what does not yet exist. God is not interested in celebrating potential. He is interested in producing reliability. Pressure reveals whether your faith is conditional or rooted. Under praise, everyone looks strong. Under pressure, truth surfaces. When pressure increases, weak habits collapse, shallow beliefs fail, and borrowed convictions disappear. What remains is what is real. This is why pressure often feels relentless. You expect it to ease once you've endured long enough, but it stays. The pressure is not there to exhaust you. It is there to stabilize you. Stability is built through sustained resistance, not momentary challenge. Chosen people are trained to operate under load. God does not want you effective only when conditions are ideal. He wants you functional when conditions are hostile, uncertain, or uncomfortable. Pressure conditions you for consistency. Praise, if given too early, creates dependence. You start performing for approval instead of alignment. You begin measuring worth by response instead of obedience. God limits praise to protect your focus. If affirmation becomes your fuel, absence of it will paralyze you. Pressure removes that dependency. Under pressure, discipline becomes non-negotiable. You can no longer rely on motivation because motivation fades quickly. You must build systems, habits, and internal structure that hold you steady when emotions fluctuate. Pressure forces maturity. This is also where endurance is formed. Endurance is not intensity. It is sustained faithfulness. Pressure teaches you to show up when energy is low, when emotions are unstable, and when results are invisible. This consistency cannot be learned through praise. Pressure also exposes the difference between strength and stubbornness. Stubbornness resists change. Strength adapts without compromising values. Under pressure, God refines how you respond, not just how long you endure. Another uncomfortable truth is that some prayers are not answered because the pressure is still working. Relief too early would interrupt the process. God allows pressure to remain until it has produced stability, humility, and discipline. Once those qualities are secure, relief becomes safe. This is why people who escape pressure prematurely often repeat cycles. They celebrate relief, but the underlying weakness remains. Pressure was rude before transformation was complete. God keeps pressure on chosen people because repetition is wasteful. Pressure also trains emotional regulation. When stress increases, many people become reactive, defensive, or impulsive. God uses pressure to teach restraint, to slow your reactions, to sharpen your discernment, to deepen your patience. Strength is not loud. It is controlled. Praise amplifies ego. Pressure humbles it. Humility is not weakness. It is accuracy. You see yourself clearly. You know your limits. You know your dependence on God. This clarity is essential for any assignment that carries weight. Chosen people learn to appreciate pressure because they understand its function. Pressure is not opposition. It is preparation. It is the environment in which reliability is forged. God does not measure strength by how you perform when everything goes right. He measures it by how you respond when nothing does. Pressure is not punishment. It is refinement, and refinement always precedes responsibility. 6. Character matters more than outcome. Most people chase outcomes because outcomes are visible. They impress others. They create status, security, and a sense of arrival. Character, on the other hand, develops quietly. It rarely gets applause, and because it's invisible, people underestimate its importance. God does not. God is not primarily focused on what you achieve. He is focused on who you become while pursuing it. Outcomes change certainty. Character sustains calling. Without character, any outcome becomes a liability. This is why God often withholds visible success, while intensifying internal refinement. He is not delaying your outcome. He is protecting your future. Outcomes without character create pressure you are not equipped to manage. They magnify flaws instead of masking them. Character is revealed in private long before it is tested in public. How you speak when no one hears you, how you act when there is no reward, how you respond when nothing improves. These moments define character more than any public milestone. Chosen people are trained to value integrity over recognition. God watches how you handle small responsibilities because small responsibilities reveal big patterns. If you cut corners in private, you will compromise publicly. If you remain faithful in obscurity, you will remain grounded in visibility. This is why repetition matters. Doing the right thing once is easy. Doing it consistently without acknowledgement is difficult. Character is lit through repeated obedience when it feels pointless. God values faithfulness more than flash. Another reason character matters more than outcome is sustainability. Many people achieve success they cannot maintain. The pressure of success exposes insecurity, pride, or instability that was never addressed. God builds character first so success becomes manageable instead of overwhelming. Character also determines how power is handled. Influence amplifies what already exists internally. If humility is absent, power corrupts quickly. God delays influence until humility is stable, not learned, stable. This is also why God allows frustration. Frustration reveals entitlement. It shows whether you believe you deserve outcomes simply for effort. Character replaces entitlement with gratitude and patience. You learn to work without demanding immediate reward. Character governs decision-making. When outcomes are uncertain, character becomes the compass. Without it, decisions are driven by fear, ego, or urgency. God trains chosen people to act from principle, not pressure. Another uncomfortable truth is that people often admire outcomes, but trust character. God prioritizes trust. He builds people who are reliable, not just impressive. Reliability requires internal order. That order is established long before results appear. Character also protects relationships. Success without character damages those around you. Ego rises, empathy shrinks. God refines character so growth does not come at the expense of others. Chosen people learn to accept slow progress. If it means deep integrity, they understand that outcomes are temporary, but character is permanent. A result can be lost. Character remains. If you are frustrated by lack of visible progress, ask what is being formed internally. What habits are stabilizing? What reactions are softening? What discipline is strengthening? These are not delays. They are investments. God is not impressed by outcomes alone. He is committed to character, and character determines whether the outcome will last. 7. Being chosen means responsibility, not superiority. This is where the message must correct the ego completely. Being chosen by God is not a statement about your importance. It is a statement about your assignment. It does not elevate you above others. It places weight on you that others are not asked to carry. Many people misunderstand chosenness because they interpret it through pride instead of purpose. They think being chosen means being special, protected or favored in comfort. In reality, being chosen means being trusted with difficulty. God does not give heavy responsibility to fragile people. Chosen does not mean exempt. It means accountable. God's strongest warriors are not those who are praised most. They are those who remain faithful under pressure, obedient without recognition, and humble without reinforcement. Strength in God's eyes is not dominance. It is reliability. Responsibility requires restraint. You are required to respond differently than others. You are required to carry yourself with discipline when others indulge. You are required to hold your tongue when others react. You are required to remain steady when others collapse. This is not unfair. It is the cost of being entrusted. This is why chosen people often feel the weight of expectation internally, not from others, but from conscience. You feel a standard pulling you upward, even when no one is watching. That standard is not anxiety. It is responsibility forming. God demands more from those he entrusts with more. He corrects them sooner. He convicts them faster. He allows less room for excuses. This is not because he is harsh. It is because precision matters when weight increases. Superiority seeks applause. Responsibility seeks alignment. Another difficult truth is that being chosen means you will often be misunderstood. People will project motives onto you. They will assume arrogance where there is discipline. They will mistake boundaries for pride. You are not required to correct every misunderstanding. Responsibility includes restraint. Chosen people learn to serve quietly. They do not announce their sacrifices. They do not seek validation for endurance. They understand that their strength is not for display but for deployment. Responsibility also means self-governance. You cannot afford to be emotionally reckless. You cannot afford to chase every desire. You cannot afford to be inconsistent. Others may survive disorder. You will not. The assignment you carry requires stability. This is why life feels heavier for chosen people. Not because they are cursed, but because they are trusted. Weight is only placed on structures designed to hold it. God would not burden you if you were incapable. Being chosen also means humility must be permanent. The moment superiority creeps in, alignment fractures. God resists pride, because pride corrupts responsibility. Humility keeps you grounded and usable. If you feel the weight of responsibility pressing on you, do not interpret it as pressure to perform. Interpret it as an invitation to mature. Responsibility is not about perfection. It is about consistency and submission. You were not chosen to stand above others. You were chosen to stand when others cannot. That is not privilege. That is responsibility. You were never chosen for comfort. You were chosen because you could endure what comfort would have ruined. If your path has been heavier, quieter, slower, and more demanding than you expected, that is not a mistake. That is the cost of responsibility. God removes ease from those He intends to trust. He strips distraction from those He plans to align. He applies pressure to those He knows will not break. Being chosen does not mean life gets softer. It means your excuses get fewer. Your standards get higher. Your obedience gets deeper. And your dependence on God becomes non-negotiable. You are not behind. You are not abandoned. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Stand firm. Carry the weight with humility. Obey even when it costs you comfort. Endure even when no one sees it. God does not build spectators. He forges carriers, and He does not choose the strong. He strengthens the chosen.